for the Horde! You failed the Horde!
Greetings and citations, everyone. That new intro, though, am I right? My good friend Estrel did a splendid job and deserves all the attention and all the goodness for how much time and energy she put into it, capturing the characters of Banneret and Skull just super well, and I just really wanted to address it by going forward with the new video. Gonna miss the old intro a little bit, but the new intro just slaps too hard not to talk about it. Alright, so, Legion. There's a lot to be said about this expansion, albeit mostly positive. It was the epic conclusion of the Burning Crusade, one of which that we got to tag along with the likes of Illidan, who finally came back after years of being, well, dead. Khadgar, Velen, and quite a few others inside of our several order halls with our legendary artifact weapons. It was and still is an epic phenomenon that I'm glad that I got to experience with many others. Very much a lightning in the bottle sort of expansion. We'll get to the title of the video in a bit, but I just want to make certain things clear before I go any further and, well, save some face here. Legion is not, and I repeat, not a bad expansion. Yes, I'm going to harp on it big time in this video, but I do want to stress that Legion was still quite good to me in most places, and I regard it as probably my third or fourth favorite expansion overall, despite my many gripes and issues with it after the fact. But this isn't a video praising Legion, far from it, and it is a very opinionated video going forward. There are, of course, reasons to why I feel the way I do, and I want to make it just how clear this is more a video for me to explain myself and my feelings towards an expansion from almost a decade ago now. I get asked this a lot as to why Legion is never an all-time favorite for me, so this video is essentially me finally explaining that. And also just talking about this topic in general, really. Got that all out of my system before we go any further. But anyways, on to the video that will probably get me screamed at still. So, without further delay, let's get cancelled. Legion, for all its greatness, ultimately failed the Horde as a faction. What do I mean by that? In an expansion that was supposed to be neutral-focused, or rather class-focused. Well, the whole world fought the Legion. There was a lot of things that they couldn't cover exactly on screen, and I get that. And we did have the Horde heavily take part in the first initial battle against the Legion on the Battle of the Broken Shore. We'll get to that too in a bit. And it's, of course, its own failings. And of course there was the Nightborn Rebellion, with Kil'jaeden leading the charge, and ultimately recruiting the Nightborn later on. Same with the Tauren recruiting the High Mountain in a similar fashion, with the Allied Race questlines, which were more so after Legion concluded. It was more of a Battle for Azeroth feature, but it did feature in at the dead end of Legion. At the beginning, I would say the Horde definitely felt alive and active, but following after the first initial wave, the Horde started to drift, and the Alliance, in my opinion, felt still alive through its characters and its races. Can't really go talking about the Horde without talking about the Alliance. Again, Legion was meant to be an expansion that didn't focus on the Alliance or the Horde, and I'd be okay with that if these so-called neutral characters, who were front and center for the majority of the expansion, weren't Alliance heavy. Velen is the leader of the Draenei, and he's certainly one of the most important figures when taking the fight against the Legion, especially in this expansion. And he's the leader of the Draenei when doing all of this, so definitely a very Alliance heavy character. There's Magni, the former leader of the Dwarves of Ironforge, and was the Speaker of Azeroth. And Khadgar, who is a member of the Sons of Lothar and a celebrated hero amongst the Alliance, having his own statue at the very gates of the Alliance's main capital. Both are very neutral but still very Alliance-centric in their views and culture, and are indeed the main leads. There's of course Illidan, who I personally feels like the only true neutral character here because he never joined the Alliance or the Horde ever. And no, just because he's a Night Elf does that mean he's a member of the Alliance. That's not the case here. While we're talking on it, I do wish we still had gotten Tyrande and Malfurion interacting with Illidan on screen to some capacity. I want screen time for all regardless of faction. If it makes sense, just do it. I feel like I'd be less jaded if we had someone like Thrall or Hamul or a neutral character who stems from the Horde being present and just as active as Velen, or just as active as Khadgar or Magni. Liadrin is one of the characters whom is given some focus in Legion, and I would have pushed more and more of that focus when going to Argus or fighting on the Broken Shore maybe. Or if the narrative didn't focus on the likes of Anduin, who was grieving his father at the Broken Shore, and I'm not taking the piss out of them for doing that either. In fact, more power to them for focusing on those characters and those themes, when they make sense. But fair is fair. If we're going to say one thing and then do another, don't you think the Horde should at the very least get that too? Especially since they took that mindset when they killed Varian Wren off and decided to unfairly kill Vol'jin off as well. Speaking of... Alright, so this is going to be one of the biggest and heaviest hitters in this entire video. Probably the main point to why I even made this. Vol'jin had just become Warchief, and really didn't get to do much compared to his predecessors and successor of Thrall, Garrosh, and Sylvanas. You'd think that the Legion, or whatever came after it, would have been a good time to focus on that lack of buildup. I mean, people were excited to see what kind of leader Vol'jin would be, what kind of Warchief he would be after his successful rebellion against Garrosh, and Thrall even deemed him being more worthy as his replacement. But nope. He gets one of, if not one of the worst deaths in Warcraft history after doing nada. He gets killed by a random Felguard. The Horde, a faction of death-defying, brilliant warriors, are given orders to retreat and leave the Alliance to fend for themselves, and then makes Sylvanas his successor because some corrupted Loa told him to. A detail that was further learned about after the fact in another expansion. Not a single Horde soldier even tries to remain behind to fight to the bitter end. It felt off to say the least for the faction whose war cry is victory or death, or Loktar Ogar and all that jazz. Not to mention they didn't even let him lead the charge against this threat on the Broken Shore. The attention felt like it was already steered on Sylvanas to lead the assault before she even became Warchief, rather than Vol'jin, who was ever present and there to help them. This should have been Vol'jin's time to shine as leader and not Sylvanas, whom was to get the spotlight after his demise anyways. This just felt like salt in the wounds upon looking back at just how much this man was sidelined for others. It felt forced, it felt upsetting, and one can really guess on why they even did it. They wanted both sides to feel the tragedy of losing a leader. Varian Wren, when you compare him to Vol'jin, is just not an equal loss. Vol'jin only just became leader, and his history really only just started, compared to Varians who had books, comics, cinematics, arcs, questlines as the King of Stormwind and the High King of the Alliance. Varian had time to shine as a leader since 2008 in Wrath of the Lich King, while Vol'jin felt like he didn't get his start really until 2012 of Mists of Pandaria. That's a 4-year difference, even if we include the bits with Cataclysm, which was a very minor patch, comparatively. Vol'jin had this grand arc of slowly falling into the role of becoming the Warchief of the Horde. It's why I probably praise Mists of Pandaria so much, because the characters feel right and fit into their roles so properly. Mists of Pandaria did a great job of setting him up to be the Horde's future and leader, only for Legion to come in and basically throw him into the trash. Vol'jin, of all people, was not the right call to kill off. And there was even at one point data mined information that pointed to him faking his death, just like he had done with Garrosh, and going on to recruit some old allies, presumably the Zandalari, which could have set up an amazing return for Battle for Azeroth and build that up a little bit better. There's loads of what they could have done with that, but we won't have that. The sheer potential of Vol'jin was ripped away from us, and it'll forever remain a black stain on the Horde and the story in general going forward. Plus, it took them forever to have Rokhan fill his shoes, well, don't wear shoes, as the Darkspear Chieftain. It remained unaddressed until the very end of Battle for Azeroth, and back then it didn't feel like something that was exactly earned either. And yes, Vol'jin is thankfully not done, and his spirit will one day become a Loa and greet us again in a different or familiar form. But that doesn't wipe away the shame of him not getting his time to shine as Warchief. I'm excited for his return, and I'm glad they did it, but I still feel quite hurt by what they did to poor old Vol'jin. This is the part where I think almost a domino effect occurs that ruins so much of the Horde for many, making Sylvanas the Warchief of the Horde. On paper, it sounds like it would be cool and fun to have a chance for Sylvanas to redeem or grow better as a person alongside the other leaders, or even possibly improve the Horde and some of the cracks that even Thrall failed to pursue in repairing. But no, that's not what they did here, not even close. Legion is very much the start of that fall here. Even before Battle for Azeroth, in the eyes of many, this ruined her character, which I still think she had signs of being corrupt, but maybe not that corrupt. At least they did something with her, and not nothing. As somebody who was formerly an avid fan of hers, and I guess I still kinda am, but also not, it's weird, I was definitely let down by what they chose to do with her in this expansion, and the two that followed after in Battle for Azeroth and Shadowlands. She was still pretty dark in Legion, where she wanted to enslave the Valkyr in order to continue the Forsaken and basically become immortal, and that is all she really does here. Her awesome vow to get back at Legion for what they did to the Horde and for killing Vol'jin, or maybe striking out against the Dreadlords or Kil'jaeden who attempted to puppeteer the undead as their force back in the day, it all falls flat. Nothing is really done with her until the next expansion. And yeah, there's a reason why the next time that we see her, people are understandably confused or even upset. But this is about Legion, not Battle for Azeroth or Shadowlands. Nothing is done about the stories told in Stormheim or from the Broken Shore unless you read the books, but even that doesn't go really anywhere either, sadly. Really, the Sylvanas becoming Warchief and the stuff in Stormheim is really where the Horde stuff kinda ended at too in Legion. It feels like the momentum just went poof, and it felt very unsatisfying. Which just sucks, especially when you read the promo summary for her that hints that she might have sacrificed herself or done something for the Forsaken that benefits them. Potential being wasted is a very common thing in today's video. Okay, this is where the orc fan in me comes in to practically die. In Legion, as stated above, you get the artifact weapons, and for whatever reason, they ripped away the Doomhammer from Thrall and gave it to the Shaman, or the Farseer. Any Shaman really, not just the Horde, or not just an orc Shaman, but all Shaman, everyone. And they went ahead and made Thrall give up his iconic weapon, and he's since given it up and has yet to retake it since then. Even though he really should, in my opinion. This is the equivalency if Anduin decided not pick up Charlemagne and instead it was just given to a random Alliance or Horde soldier. It, in my opinion, would be disrespectful to the Alliance as a whole, to the humans as a whole. Something they never did, and something that Anduin still carries to this day, in spite of him having his doubts to be king and doubts to be a warrior like his father. This is a very orc and horde themed weapon, and it was made for everyone suddenly. It's not a good feeling if you're a big orc fan to have that happen. Yes, it's cool to wield and have for transmog, I'm fine with that if it was just a replica, but lore-wise, not good. Never should have happened personally, And that's a whole debacle with some other artifact weapons too. But this specifically is aimed directly at the Doomhammer and Thrall. This is where the debate started to come from too, that Thrall lost his connection to the elements after his Makarad Garrosh, because people thought he cheated and the elements hated him for some reason. Not true in the slightest, but you'll still have people assume that who didn't read the lore regarding the Doomhammer regarding Thrall. It's also why he left the Horde and Azeroth at its greatest time of need. Back then, I didn't have much of an issue with it, as I assumed the weapon would return to Thrall once we were done with it, and Thrall would have come back in some way to help out against the Legion without his weapon or powers. He did not. And I'm okay with the story to some extent, but it's not one of those things, again, where a decision sounds good on paper, but ultimately hurts the story going forward. You're telling me that Thrall wouldn't keep fighting the demons, the same Legion he fought side by side against to save the world the first time in the Third War to defend the World Tree. You're telling me he would take his family and go with them to Nagrand instead of fight himself. Take his family to Nagrand and keep them safe. I'm fine with that. That makes perfect sense to keep them safe and clear from the Legion, who are threatening Azeroth, as a backup plan. Give them a chance to live their lives and not be slaved to the Legion. But Thrall retreating and not helping out, it doesn't sound like him. The Thrall that I love. Again, I'm okay with it if he just left after the Legion conflict ended, but they make it sound like he went to Nagrand pretty immediately since he lost his hammer. Maybe he went there initially to regain his connection to the elements, like he did back during the Cataclysm. In a similar fashion, though, to the Broken Shore, it feels wrongly written for the Horde to retreat. For Thrall to retreat, though. Personally, I think this would have been an opportunity to tackle Thrall's warrior side, and have him keep fighting for his friends, for the Horde, for Azeroth, to finish what he started back in Reign of Chaos, and end the demons who attempted to shackle his people for generations, to finally avenge Grom for dying after freeing their people. But like so many other orcs and so many Horde heroes, we don't get that. Oh, and for whatever reason, Thrall doesn't even show up for Vol'jin's funeral. I don't know. They were like brothers, and if it was because he couldn't handle losing another friend, I wish they addressed that, but I don't think that's the reason personally, and they never do it. They also, in my opinion, cringely decided to have Thrall tell the players that he doesn't think the prophecy was ever about him, but rather the player themselves. It's just bad. For someone who's a huge fan of Thrall, wielding the Doomhammer is awesome, but from a narrative standpoint, I hate it so much. Don't make the prophecy intended for Thrall and for orcs for any schmuck out there. That's come on, man. Really, the same for any artifact weapon that had their wielders give it up, or had to die to give it up. Ashbringer, Tyrion, stuff like that. That doesn't feel really good to me, in my opinion. And I hope that we see many of these weapons returned to their proper owners or lore characters. Let the players keep a replica to transmog, but let these weapons of great power and lore relevance be pulled from the banks so that they can be in the story again. There's so many times where I feel like Thrall was meant to be in the story or have a role to play in Legion, but it was scrapped or just thrown in with orc fatigue. And I'll say it for the people in the back, but if a character makes sense to be in the story, they should be there regardless if you're quote-unquote tired of them. Not everyone is tired of them, and some would like some proper closure. Thrall definitely should have had a part to play in the Legion's end, considering his roles prior in Warcraft 3, and the whole nature of what the orcs had with the demons. It was very personal for them to take down this threat, and we never saw that. Alright, I think we've gotten the leader problem out of my system. What about the Horde just being present in general? No? We're not even gonna have that? Okay. Yeah, so, minor or large, or however you prefer, characters in the Horde ultimately start to just fade out entirely after Surmar's campaign. I feel like that only adds to reasons to why the campaigns, in particular, was probably the highlight for Legion for me, and so many others. Surmar just slapped all around for all sides, and I don't even think it really needed the faction storyline for it to work, but it did, and that's just great to me. Alright, I can't speak on every Order Hall campaign, but for Hunters, which I can speak on, it was very mixed and sadly among my least favorites, and probably a good example of just how far this neutral focus narrative just doesn't work in my opinion, especially when you sideline an entire faction like this. On paper, taking down Hakkar the Houndmaster sounds like a very cool thing for hunters to do, but I remember it feeling all over the place and very little fanfare in general for the actual hunter characters themselves. I don't even think you really permanently kill Hakkar. He's still out there as he dies in Dalaran, so you don't even kill him in the Twisting Nether, and he probably respawn on Argus or respawn in the Twisting Nether and will be back someday. But this was especially bad for Horde characters and Horde hunters in general. Yes, we're gonna go there, you know where I'm going. Rexxar, the champion of the Horde, and for many was the face of Beastmasters, and for some reason he was changed into a survival hunter. Now, I can see reasons why they would do that, since he was a very melee-based hunter, and for many lore characters, there are usually several specs of their class, or they're two classes into one, but they really should have kept him as a Beastmaster hunter, considering that was what he was known for years. In Warcraft 3, he was a Beastmaster hero unit, and it just feels wrong to have changed that. But that is not the worst part with my boy. He was heavily sidelined within the Hunter Order Hall campaign to a point where all you really do in the campaign is recruit him into the Unseen Path. He doesn't help out with Hakkar the Houndmaster, he doesn't help out with tracking down the Fell Hunters or whatever. Oh no. You give that to a Gilnean hunter trainer and his pet from Gilneas. Yeah, I did not like that. I do not like how they treated Rexxar here remotely. That is just criminal to do to a fan favorite, in my opinion, to have nobody get more time focused on them than someone I feel like is the face of a class or a spec as a whole. It would be like if Thrall was... Oh. Wait. Well, it would be like if Prophet Velen was sidelined in favor of some random priest instead. They didn't do that with Velen. Personally, I feel like Hakkar the Houndmaster should have been the one responsible for the demise of Vol'jin, and that this should have been the main objective of the Unseen Path, of many hunters. You could have had the Dark Rangers sent by Sylvanas, Rangers in general from all the Elf clans and tribes, Shadow Hunters from Vol'jin's gang and dark spears and whatnot, and of course Rexxar and many others. Be that their goal to take down the demon who robs their friend, who robbed the Horde of their Warchief, of Vol'jin. Already Varisa, Haldoran, Rexxar, Rokhan if they wanted, and of course Tirith and Court had an established friendship and connection with Vol'jin. All could have been members of the Unseen Path. Does this make the story Horde-centric? Sure, but the Rogue Order Hall campaign was also very alliance-heavy in saving Stormwind from Deathrock's machinations, so I don't think there is harm in this particular story or narrative that they could have done. Plus, Hakkar is a known antagonist and demon from the War of the Ancients and could be causing further havoc for all of Azeroth and the Night Elves and in the aftermath of Vol'jin's demise. This would have given the characters more of a unity and a purpose, I feel, and make it far more personal for the likes of Rexxar and the other hunters to get involved and avenge their friend. Kil'jaeden, one of the largest villainous characters outright responsible for the Orcs' corruption, their broken planet, and the formation of the Horde. Yeah, not a single Orc in sight to fight him or address that he's even dead. Same goes for the Blood Elves, who were in a similar boat to the Orcs and lost their prince to Kil'jaeden's corruption. You also had the Forsaken, who were created from his antics too, as they were used to become the Scourge that Kil'jaeden helped create when he made Ner'zhul the Lich King. Forsaken, a bit more of a stretch, but I'm trying to give reasons for them to do something, or for Sylvanas to do something here, really. Those are the main three, mainly the Orcs, the Blood Elves, needed someone to represent them or something for his demise. Be that in Liadrin, Thrall, Sarfang, or so on. Yes, the Draenei were and are the forefront of Kil'jaeden's downfall through Velen, as it should be. Velen was the perfect character to be present, and I'm never going to dispute that. Same for Illidan, who was once a pawn of Kil'jaeden. All I'm wondering is, where were any of the characters or Horde races to aid in taking on the tomb, or talking of what transpired there even as an aftermath? It is one of the most frustrating segments I think I feel in this video outside of the Vol'jin section. I would have been fine with this even going outside of Legion in Battle for Azeroth, Shadowlands, or even Dragonflight currently, if they just addressed Kil'jaeden's death in any shape or form from the Lich King, Orc, Scourge, Forsaken, or Blood Elves perspective. But no, we're mostly given it through Velen and the Burning Legion themselves, which makes sense, but I digress. We needed that for an Orc, Forsaken, or a Blood Elf, or someone there if it was brief. Kil'jaeden was a massive character who should have definitely been addressed as finally defeated and dealt with by the Horde especially. Fireworks should have been sung off in the skies of Orgrimmar for this one dude. Very similar to what I said about Kil'jaeden, no Horde forces or Horde characters play a role in the very bastion and homeworld of the Burning Legion of Argus. Same goes for the raid or the dungeon. I cannot stress it enough at how empty it felt like having 0 Horde characters come with us and play a role in the finale against the Legion. Yes, I know Liadrin and Aethys tagged along with us, but all Liadrin did was fight for a little bit in the background, and Aethys got mad that somebody stole his friggin' lunch. I would have loved to have seen Liadrin have remarks for what occurred between Illidan and Xira, to have that introspection on what exactly the figureheads of the light are capable of, especially with what the Blood Knights once did to them. Have her have doubts or be resolute that the light should be a force for good, not be forced upon by others, something that could very well be a problem as they tap further into the Sunwell or something. I hate repeating myself here, I'm completely fine with Velen and the Draenei getting the center stage. That makes so much sense, I'm not even gonna question it. It's not only about the Horde not getting a major spotlight here. It is, for the most part, of course. At this point, though, I'm just asking for crumbs for the Horde here, really. I know what I'm sounding like in this video, but I really just want small nuggets for them here. And it doesn't get better in the future, I'm telling you right now. This is a reoccurring issue beyond Legion, sadly. Just give us acknowledgements, actions, dialogue, short quests, anything really, as it just makes it feel like the Horde was and is an afterthought right now in the story, especially in how it was in Legion. All we needed was a small questline, or 1 or 2 characters talking a lot, or doing something for or on the planet. I feel like I'm a crazy person for asking the bare minimum, but I'm trying to respect the decision that this was supposed to be a neutral theme story, but I feel like you've dug yourself a hole when it's Legion, and that is the threat, which outright created the Horde and is the enemy to everyone, everywhere. I'll reiterate what I've said before many years ago, but Varrock Sarfang and Liadrin should have been the faces of the Horde during Legion, especially on Argus. Liadrin played a significant role in the Nightborn Rebellion in Surmar, and tagged along with us to Argus anyways. Have her be there for Velen, since he helps restore the Sunwell with the light of Anaru, and also for the corruption that nearly gripped her people and corrupted her prince. Liadrin is a perfect representative and leader of the Horde and the Sin'dorei to take a stand. Also, it'd be good time for Illyria to see what's become of her people, and to rally in the Army of the Light to witness a paladin of the Horde in action, and be a tad more respectful, or at the very least, ask her questions about her people and, their culture, and how this came to be. As for Sarfang, he has a large role in nurturing the orcs when they recovered from their demonic fel addiction, when Manroth was first slain by Grom. Plus, he has a brother, Broxagar, who fought and died against the very titan and leader of the Burning Legion, Sargeras, right on Argus. There's even a tribute the Broken made for him. He was already the de facto leader of the orcs when Thrall left, so why not make him their face when on the planet? Varrock already has sorrow for what he did to the Draenei, and it would make sense for him to want to make things right. Plus, he'd see just how similar the Draenei are to the orcs after witnessing what became of Argus and how close it is to being like Outland. Plus, for Varrock ultimately playing a huge role in Battle for Azeroth and dying in it, I think that would have struck even harder for his character to fight the Alliance, and for us to have to say goodbye to him after his journey on Argus. But again, ultimately Argus mostly just focused on Turalyon, Illyria, and Velen. Very Alliance-centric characters that I cannot stress on how frustrating it was for the Horde, that just really didn't have anyone or really anything to represent them at the very precipice and defeat of the Burning Legion for good. At the very least, the Legion isn't totally defeated exactly, and Sargeras isn't totally dealt with. But that doesn't change that this was definitely meant to be the Burning Legion's ultimate downfall, and the Horde just weren't there. If you want to know why I praise Battle for Azeroth so much over Legion so many times, and still do, it's simply because both sides were at least represented. Yes, Battle for Azeroth has its own long list of issues that I won't get into fully here, but at the very least the Horde was ever present in the story, and for the most part, felt respected and thought out at least. I can't really give the same to Legion, where it felt like many of their stories just stopped. Well, if you got this far, I'll just restate a lot of my points. The Horde was ultimately formed because the Legion made them, or what they are today. They were originally tools, and they had little to do with its final defeat. No characters, no factions, no nothing really came to stop them, and we're just left with a, yes, no, the Horde helped defeat the Legion, definitely. They were there. Sure, you can argue the players were there, but I hardly ever use that for a proper argument. Otherwise, you could use that for practically anything, or anywhere when a faction or a race aren't given proper screen time, which is just a silly argument to use in my opinion. So, I'm looking forward to that in the comments. I'm sure that'll happen. I am prepared. Okay, managed to get one in there. But despite being hailed as one of the greats, this is probably where Legion gets dragged down the most for me. I hope it helps you understand why I feel almost neglected by this expansion as a big fan of the Horde. It really is just my opinion and how I feel about this whole thing. I ultimately still have a lot of good memories of this expansion, and only hope we never get a situation like this again, where the Horde or the Alliance are sidelined completely, and entirely to the point where the people are asking where they are for 2 patches. Hopefully my tune changes on that front too, in War Within and beyond. But if anything, this kinda just encourages my thoughts on what neutral expansions are doing to Warcraft, which can probably be a video of its own someday. But ultimately, I just think they need to return to what worked, of having both the Alliance and Horde having stories together equally, as it quite simply worked and has less of these hurdles we've been seeing since Legion, really. I don't think we should repeat these issues for any side, regardless of who is your favorite or least favorite faction. It is my hope and optimistic nature that makes me hope that moments addressed here are never repeated, and hopefully, on some strange level, my outbursts here are paid attention to in the years to come for Warcraft. A man like me can hope. But let me know what you think down below. Do you feel like the Legion expansion failed the Horde, or do you feel like this is an exaggeration? Let me know all your thoughts down below. Go ahead and do your things. Give this a like, a comment, subscribe, share, and do them bells, I guess. Feel free to join me on my Discord where we talk about all sorts of stuff and things. We'd love to have you. Or you can support me on my Patreon like these amazing folks here. But until next time, my friends,